Hello, and welcome to End of Month for Canada in the Soluno software. In this recording, we will take a look at the processes so that you can close out your month and eventually your fiscal year in the Canadian version of Soluno. So let's go ahead and get started. So the purpose, of course, is to close out your month. So if we go to the financials, the idea is we want to be able to close our period. When you close a period, it locks that period down so people can't backdate entries into it. That way they can't affect your financial reports. But before you close your periods, there are a few things you want to do, like the bank reconciliation. But there's some other things that are uniquely Canadian that you all have to do that we don't really do here in the States. So one of those things is your GST-HST. For those of you who have to report the GST-HST, you want to go ahead and get that done. Now, sometimes it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes it's annually. Depends on your law firm. So you do it as often as necessary. But to run your GST-HST, we're going to go to Views and Reports. We're going to go to the Other tab. And then we're going to go to GST-HST. First thing is you want to just review the current report. So I've closed a few periods already, so hence my start period is grayed out. You can only enter the start period the first time you run the report in Soluno. But put in the end of your period. So I run mine quarterly, but you run yours however often you need to. So I'll run it January through March 31st. The first thing you want to do is preview the GST-HST report. So you can look it over, make sure everything looks right. And then click Submit. Might take some time, so while that's running, by all means, work on other stuff in the product. That's fine. Once it's done, you'll see the last report preview right here, and you'll have a copy of the report here as a PDF. So to see the GST-HST, click on that PDF icon, and we can open up the report. Now, our GST-HST might work a little differently than what you're used to in other products. We have a rolling report. And what that means is you may have what I have here at the top of my report, which is prior unreported entries. So what we can do is if you've already closed out your GST-HST period and then someone either creates a bill or a payable and has to backdate it into that closed period, we don't force you to try to reopen the period and re-report the numbers. What we do is we just let you backdate the item, and then we carry that GST-HST information forward to your current period. So then when you report the current period's numbers, you'll report the numbers from the last period that got backdated in, and you'll still be correct with the government. So here, apparently someone backdated an AP back into December, so we're going to carry these numbers in the current period. That's why it's called prior unreported entries. That way, if you see something here and you're curious, well, how did this appear? Why do we have something backdated? At least you have the details here to look it up and find out why someone backdated it into a closed period. And if it's something that should have happened, then no problem. We're going to carry these numbers forward so you can report them on your current period's tax. Then under that, you have everything from the current period. So here's all my billings. Here's my accounts payable. Any payments you made will show up with an asterisk. So there's a payment I made to the Receiver General. Looks like my fourth quarter 2021 payment. And you just scroll through and make sure everything looks right. Look, there's no issues. Nothing looks out of the ordinary. And once you reach the bottom of the report, we'll give you your totals. Again, the asterisks are your payment. And then we have all the information at the bottom of the section. Also broken out by the box numbers if you're going to file electronically, so you know which numbers to put in each box. So to read our report, here's my previous balance. I paid it. We can see that payment in this month's period, so I owe nothing coming forward. The first column are my current period numbers. The second column is if I had any prior unreported numbers. The third column is the total of both columns. This is the column you want to look for reporting purposes. So for like filing box 109, I don't want to file 1698809 because I had that prior unreported item. I want to report 1691331. And the payment I owe is not the 1698809. It's the 161931 is what I actually owe because of that prior unreported item. Now, to make your payment, close out of the report, you do have to enter it a specific way. Go to Add Entries, do an operating out. Of course, the bank account you're paying from, the date of the payment. Here you enter the amount. In this case, I think it was $16,000. We'll just say $17,000 for today's purposes, so I don't have to look it all up. And then to record it as a GST HST remittance, down in the box where it says includes tax, click in here and tell us this is your GST HST remittance. Then all you need to do is fill in who you're paying, the receiver general. And if you want to put a memo, like this is for my second quarter 2023 HST, GST, anything you want to list as the memo that'll print out on the check if you're printing a physical check. If you're paying electronically, then you can do this as an EFT. But if you need a physical check, leave it at check. And then just click Save to make your payment. If you're lucky enough to get a refund, that of course would be operating in. And then for source, instead of client payment, you're going to tell us, I'm getting a GST HST refund, and then you'll put in the refund amount. I don't know how often you all get that refund, but if you do, this is how you would enter it in. Most of the time, it's going to be an operating out, and you're going to do a GST HST remittance. As long as you choose that option, when you save and pay, it will then show up on the GST HST report. As a matter of fact, if I cut this check, it'll even tell you, don't forget to close your tax period. So we will remind you when you make your payment, if you haven't already, to remember to close your period. So to close the period, go back to the reports, views and reports, other, GST, HST, and to close the period, put in the end of the period you're closing, and select Prepare GST, HST report and close period, and then click Submit. Again, it may take some time to close, so by all means, go ahead and do other stuff in the system. Once it has closed, it will show up down below here in previous periods. So you'll have access to all your previous GST periods along with the GST HST report as well. You can always reprint that period report here. We do have the ability to delete and reopen a previous GST HST period with the delete icon. I know there's a couple products out in the market that don't let you reopen a closed period. We don't recommend you do it if you've already filed, but if you ever have to, you can delete and redo a closed GST HST period. For those of you who have to do PST, it's pretty much an identical process. You'll just go to the Sales Tax tab, and same thing, put in the period for your PST, prepare the sales tax report and preview it and review it, click Submit, let it run. By all means, do other work in the system. Check on it periodically. When it's done, you should see today's date with the PDF preview. Click on the PDF to preview it. This is also a rolling report, so if anybody backdated anything into a closed PST period, we will bring it into their unreported entries. I don't have anything backdated, so here are my current entries from my PST report, and then here are my numbers down below. Again, the current period, prior unreported entries, and the total of both columns, so always use the last column for reporting. To make your remittance, so add entries, operating out, put in the amount, choose PST remittance, which then also gives you the box to type in the commission amount. And then save just like I did previously for GST HST. And to close the period, back to views and reports, other, sales tax, put in the end of the period, and select prepare sales tax report and close period. And again, your previous periods will be listed down below with a copy of the PST report. Now we're going to cover some specific Canadian provinces, so please bear with me. I'm going to go into admin settings to show you these. So in order to make some of these, you have to be an admin to set it up properly. So I'm going to go into admin settings. And we're going to go to firm, settings, and then provincial. So for all provinces, we link with the conveyancer. Just contact support if you need to set that up. For Ontario and for Newfoundland and Labrador, you have a transaction levy. So if you need to charge the transaction levy, you need to set it up here. So if you're in Ontario, expand out the section, turn on the transaction levy, then fill in the dollar amounts for the real estate and litigation levy. We will already have a liability account. You don't create the liability account. We have one set up if you use this feature. You can also set up an activity code for the transaction levy if you wish. If you are not going to charge your clients a transaction levy, you're going to take it as a firm expense. Then you can turn on this box by ticking it, and we will just charge it back to a firm expense GL account, which again, we will set up for you. Once you've made your selections, click Save. Newfoundland and Labrador, same concept. Turn on the transaction levy, and then put in the dollar amounts for real estate, litigation, personal property, and we will also set up a liability account for you as well. We just don't have the ability to do a firm expense in Newfoundland and Labrador. So first off, make sure you turn on the levies. After you turn them on, you then have to assign them to the appropriate areas of practice. So once those are set, go to the Areas of Practice tab, go into like Real Estate, double click to open it, and assign the real estate levy. Depending, of course, which province you're in. For those of you not in Ontario, Newfoundland, and Labrador, you would just leave these blank. And again, save any changes you make. To use the levy, you go to Add Entries, Expenses. If you go up here to the hamburger icon, little 3 bars, click it, and turn on the levy column. Now, whenever you need to charge a levy, select it, the file, and then just click the levy button. and we will pull in the levy. We should pull in the appropriate dollar amount. Now, the reason area of practice is important is because, let me choose a different file. If it doesn't fall under the area of practice, if that file is not set to real estate or litigation, we will not allow you to apply the levy to it. That's why you have to make sure you set up the areas of practice with the appropriate levy. And of course, just save the levy when you're done. Now, if you've already applied a transaction levy, which I do this all the time, it will tell you, okay, you probably don't really need to do that. You've already applied it. If necessary, you can override that, though. So I'll get rid of that since I already applied it. For reporting purposes, go to View and Reports. Go to the Other tab. For Ontario, you'll have the Transaction Levy Ontario tab. Click the down arrow and tell us if we can run it for all levies, just the civil, or just the real estate. You can narrow down the date range, responsible attorney, and you can get a list of your levies. And for Newfoundland and Labrador, you'll have your own tab. Same thing, you can run it for all or specific levy, and you can see the levies you've charged. Next up, British Columbia. If you want to apply a trust administration fee, turn it on, put in the amount, and again, we will choose the GL account for you and set it up. Enter your firm filing ID. If you want, you can set up an activity code for the TAF. And again, you have the option to take it as a firm expense rather than charging it to your clients. And again, just click Save when you are done. To use the TAF, what I would generally recommend, so you go to Add Entries, go to Trust In, and in the Trust In section here in the middle, if you hit the hamburger icon, you can turn on a TAF column. That way, when you receive the settlement, you can charge the TAF as you enter the settlement in. So just fill in the information. You received it from, the file it belongs to, and then if you want to charge the TAF, just click the TAF box. And then click Save to save the trust in, and at the same time, we'll charge the TAF. And now if we go to that client ledger, there's the receipt of the $1 million into his trust account, and there's the $15 trust administration fee for their next invoice. Now, since you may not always charge the TAF, what you can do in British Columbia is when you enter a file in, you will have the option down below. If they're exempt from the fee, tag this box when you create the file, and we will warn you if you try to charge them a TAF because they're exempt. So what happened with that existing file is after I charged the TAF, it automatically ticked that box for me to say we've already processed the TAF. If you ever need to override it, you can turn that back off by clicking the green button, and that will allow you to apply another TAF to this file. But you can either manually say they're exempt, or when you go and receive a trust in and you charge them the TAF, it'll automatically tag the box so you don't charge them an additional TAF. And again, we do have a report. So go to Views and Reports, Trust Administration Fee, click the down arrow, and you can run your TAF report. One last time into admin settings, provincial, and now Alberta. If you're in Alberta, you probably have to file your trust safety with the Law Society. So here, enter the portal where you upload your documents. You should have your own unique portal. I don't have one, so that's not really going to be a true portal, but that's where you're going to put in your portal for upload, and then tell us which lawyer is going to be associated with the remittance. Now, if you don't see the lawyer's name here, that's because their user ID does not have their Law Society number assigned to them. So I will use Allison as the example. Allison has her Law Society number, so she shows up here in the drop-down list. If I go to my users, and I'm still in admin settings, I go to Allison's ID, and I go to her Associations tab, and I remove her Law Society number. And I save her user ID. Since she no longer has a Law Society number, she can no longer be associated with a trust safety remittance. So now when I go back into settings, provincial, Alberta, she is no longer available in the list. So if you're missing somebody who's supposed to be doing the remittance, verify you've added their Law Society number to their user ID. To do trust safety, go to Views and Reports. We're not going to Other this time. This time we're going to go to Banking. For those of you in Alberta, you will have a tab called Trust Safety. Go to Trust Safety. Put in the period that you're running your trust safety for. Preview the documents to look over the reports to make sure they're accurate. Click Submit. Again, that may take some time. Again, you are welcome to work on other parts of the product while that's generating. After some time, go back, and you should see all 4 reports here available for review. If you go to the Law Society website, we are an authorized Law Society submitter. You will see our software on their website that we are duly recognized by the Law Society of Alberta. And here you'll have your Billings Journal report, your receivables, your trust transactions, and your trust listing. All the reports required by the Law Society of Alberta. Review them. Once you're sure everything is correct, then you want to go ahead and produce the final documents and upload them to the Law Society. So choose the second option, Produce Final Documents. Click Submit. Again, feel free to work in other areas. This will take slightly longer because now we're generating 8 documents. Go to previous periods. Still not quite done yet because I don't see the attachments. I'll work a little bit longer. And now it's done. So the red PDFs are your copies of the reports. The purple ones are your CSV files to upload. So download the purple files. Then here, and I don't know how well you can see it, but right to the right of the submit button is that portal that you set up on the admin side. So just click the portal to go to the web page, log into the Law Society, and then upload your reports to the Law Society. So at this point, we're probably getting ready to close our month. So you've done your bank reconciliation. You've run whatever reports you need for your province. You've reviewed all your reports. Next step before you close, you should review your financials. So go to the Financials tab, little coin icon, and run your general ledger. Run your balance sheet. Run your trial bal. Run your profit and loss. Look at these reports. Does everything look accurate to you? Is there anything out of the ordinary on these reports? Now, I do recognize you probably have an accountant or bookkeeper that reviews these things. But if it's your business, it's still a good idea to look these reports over yourself. Yeah, your accountant or bookkeeper is probably doing a very good job. But let's face it, there are people in this world that can take advantage of others. So you should always keep an eye on these reports yourself. And really, what you're looking for is just anything that looks out of the ordinary. Anything that just stands out. So like on the general ledger, do I see some numbers in here that I don't feel I should see in an account? Like if you see a number in your operating retainer, especially if you're in Canada, that's usually not a good sign. You generally don't do operating retainers in Canada. It's more of a US thing. You all generally use your trust accounts. So that might be something you want to question. So look through the general ledger, see if there's anything out of the ordinary. Look at your balance sheet. Everything should balance. But you get some overall view of your assets and your liabilities. Do any of these numbers look out of the ordinary? Again, I see minus 1,000 in my operating retainer. Why do I have a $1,000 minus in my operating retainer? Look at your trial balance. This is where your debits and your credit should zero out. Again, look for numbers in the GL that look out of the ordinary. And of course, your profit and loss, or otherwise known as the income statement as well. Are you making or losing money? So you should review these 4 reports on a monthly basis. Have an idea what's going on in your own firm. Then when you're ready, close your period. So when you close a period, by default, the end of period is the end of your fiscal year. So I close on a calendar year. So mine says December 31st, 2022. You may have a different date there if you don't use the calendar year as your fiscal year. What I normally recommend is you should close out month by month. So the last month I closed was March 2022. So now I'm ready to close April 2022. So I would set this date to April. I'm not closing my fiscal year. I'm just closing the month of April. So I do not check this box. I leave it alone. I just click submit. And I let it close. And I can do other stuff while it's closing. You're closing the month so people cannot backdate entries into those closed periods that would throw off your financial reports. It's a way to future-proof your firm. Let's make sure people aren't adding entries that I'm not aware of. I don't want them to put things back in time, which maybe they're trying to take money from me or some other nefarious purpose. But you should be closing months on a fairly regular basis. That doesn't mean because next week is the first week of August that I should close July immediately. There's usually a couple month leeway before you close out your months. Sometimes, yes, you do have things you need to backdate. So that doesn't mean August 1st I go and close out July. No, maybe in August you're only closing out April or May. That's fine. But I do recommend you close out month by month. And when it's done, you'll have your closed month here. So there's April closed. And then you'll have 5 reports for your records. You'll have your general ledger, a detailed general ledger, your balance sheet, your trial bal, and your income statement. And then just when it's time, close out month to month. Now, maybe you don't want to close out month to month. We don't force you to do month to month. I know some products do. If I just wanted to close out the rest of 2022 without closing the fiscal year, I could do that. Just click submit. I can close out May 1st through December 31st all in one fell swoop. It's going to take a little bit longer because I'm closing out several months worth of data, but it can be done. So you all decide at the firm when should you close periods out. It's probably going to take a little bit longer. Yeah, I still don't have my reports generated, so I know it's not done. Again, work on other things while it's closing. And once it's done, I'll see the PDFs. The only difference is for April, if I look at the general ledger, it is for the month of April. So it'll show that it's April 1st through April 30th, 2022. When you close out a series of months like I did, now this is going to be a slightly different time frame. It's going to be May 1st through December 31st, 2022. So just be mindful of how often you close your periods. If you did close out a month or a period and you do have to backdate something and your bookkeeper says, no, we actually do have to backdate it, you can reopen a closed period by clicking the trash can icon. So I can open up this whole time frame back up again by just clicking delete. It's going to warn you again. The further back you go, it needs to reopen the others after it as well, just like the bank rec. So hopefully you can catch these quick if you do have to backdate something. Am I making entries in that period? Yes. And now that period's been reopened. Now, one of the reasons you may have to reopen a period is because your bookkeeper needs you to make a manual journal entry. So this tab here. So journal entry is where you'll make manual journal entries. All of our transactions generally make a general ledger entry for you, but there are times you have to manually make an entry, like depreciation, or maybe if you have someone doing your payroll and they cut the checks for you, you need to add those payroll entries in. So that's where you can use a journal entry. Put in the date of the journal entry, put a reference if you like, and the memo should be what you're making this entry for. So maybe I'm making depreciation entries. Now, if you're not the bookkeeper and accountant, generally they'll tell you what accounts to use. So you would just type in either the number or the name to find the account and then put in the entries as they dictated to you. They might give you like a spreadsheet. We can import journal entries as well. So if they have an Excel spreadsheet with the entries, you can drag and drop them down in the bottom right here to populate instead of manually entering them in. So again, just depends on how you want to enter them in, whether your accountant or bookkeepers automatically put them in a spreadsheet for you. We may have to tweak the spreadsheet to fit. So if you're having troubles, just contact support. We'll make sure it fits. And general accounting practices tell me debits and credits have to balance. So if these are out of balance, like mine are, the save button will be grayed out. We will not let you save an out of balance transaction. So make sure these balance. And then just click Save to make the manual journal entry. What you want to be careful of when making manual journal entries is this. Transfer funds, for example. I'm moving money from my operating account to my petty cash. Let's say I'm moving $5,000. Everything's above board. debits and credits equal, zero out, save buttons there. I click on save. This message pops up. You have chosen a special control GL account for this entry. Continuing may cause a discrepancy between the general ledger and a subjournal. Basically, what's going to say, what it's telling you right now is if you continue this, when you try to reconcile your general ledger against your bank journal report, those numbers are no longer going to match because that entry is only updating the general ledger. It is not touching the bank journal. So if you acknowledge this and click OK, if I now run my general ledger report and I run it for my petty cash account, I run that report. Then I go to Views and Reports, and I run the bank journal for my petty cash account. It says my petty cash account has $10,100 in it. My general ledger, on the other hand, thinks it has $15,600 in it. Because that general ledger entry just busted the reports. So if you see that special control account warning pop up, stop what you're doing, cancel out. If you don't know what to do, contact support. We'll walk you through the process on how you should enter that transaction in. If you've already saved it like I did, then you can go to your General Journal tab. And your General Journal tab shows you all the manual entries that you've made. I can run my General Journal. Find that entry. There's the depreciation entry I made, but there's the transfer funds. Delete that. And now these reports should balance. Once you've got all your stuff done and you're ready to close out your fiscal year, go to close period. Again, make sure this is the end of your fiscal year. Tag the box, close fiscal year, and submit. And just let it finish. It's going to take a little time, especially since I haven't closed out any earlier months, so it's doing a lot of work. But just let that run. Again, I know it's not done because I don't have the PDFs there. What should happen is that number should crank up, which I believe it just did. So now it's closed. You'll know you've closed the fiscal year because you'll see the red book icon in that particular line item. That is your fiscal year adjustments. To see the end of year adjustments we made, click on the book icon and you'll see the adjustments. Generally, we're zeroing out your income and expense and updating the retained earnings equity. So you do want to close out your fiscal year in Soluno so that your numbers for the next year are clean and you start out with new income and expense numbers for the new year. But that is how you close out your fiscal year in Soluno. If you need to go back and reopen it to make corrections, which does occasionally happen, then just click the delete icon to reopen it. It reopens that period, reopens the fiscal year, and you're good to go. Now, just as an aside, one thing you never ever do is you can reopen as far back as you need to, but don't ever delete this last line that has no book or no PDF icons. Those are your opening GL numbers. If you delete that, you're going to have to re-enter a bunch of data to get your books back to where they were. So never, ever delete the last line in this list. But that is the closing of the fiscal year. So that is it for end of month for Canada. If you ever have any questions, feel free to email us here at training@soluno.legal. Also, don't forget to visit our website at www.soluno.legal. If you click on the resources tab and go to the training hub section, we do have the place where you can register for our live classes. We have recordings of our classes, like this class is the example. We have mini videos that cover specific topics in Soluno, and all of our training documentation is also located on the website. With that, I hope you found this class useful, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.